Ma'am, in the words of Bob the Tomato from Veggie Tales, have we got a show for you? I just quoted Veggie Tales. If you know the show, congratulations. If you don't, then please, I'm here to educate you. Veggie Tales, great Christian show, great TV show when I was little, loved it. Bob the Tomato said at the start of the intro, have we got a show for you? And boy, do we have a show for you on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon / evening on this Election Day Frenzy of a Pigskin Frenzy, college football edition of Pigskin Frenzy. You're not going to want to miss what I got to say. Monumental upsets happened this past Saturday. We're going to talk about that. We're going to unveil our first round of Frenzy rankings right before the show here in a few hours of the college football playoff top 25. The actual show comes on ESPN tonight. Before that, 7 Eastern, 6 Central on ESPN that night, we're going to talk about our Frenzy rankings. And everybody's been looking forward to that. Everyone's been like, Joel, when's the Pigskin Frenzy college football playoff rankings coming out? When are your Frenzy rankings coming out? Your answer, your prayers, everybody's been answered. Your voices, everything's been answered. We are unveiling our first set now. It's November 5th, year of our Lord 2024. We're ready to go, ready to rock and roll on this show. Welcome to Pigskin Frenzy on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Joel Norris. And whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify, listening on Podbean, or listening on Apple, a big thank you for taking some time out of your Tuesday to just sit back, watch, and listen to some college football coverage presented by me. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like each episode, leave comments down below. Spotify, Podbean, and Apple, all you got to do is just share around with others and follow on there as well. X, Instagram, and Facebook, just type in Pigskin Frenzy. Follow like the pages there. You're going to get episode updates. You're going to get news and highlights from across college and NFL football. You're going to get trivia questions on Instagram stories. Go and answer today's college football questions as well as all things up to date for Pigskin Frenzy. Our website, not Facebook, by the way. I keep saying Facebook's out of habit. We're no longer on Facebook, but X and Instagram at Pigskin_Frenzy. Guys, knock on wood. Check out the website, www.pigskinfrenzy.weebly.com. There you'll find all things up to date about Pigskin Frenzy. You will find a home and about me page. Learn more about me as your podcast host. There you can find, you can write your name, contact down below. There's name, email, question. I'll answer it on the show or off air if need be. We're going to, play all platforms. Just click on which one's your favorite platform style. We also have our affiliations, which brings us to our proud partners at the Beard Club. Guys, if you want a great shave, you want to look good, the Beard Club has the answer for you. Grooming needs, everything's going to be met with the Beard Club. Beard growthing kits, beard grooming kits, you're going to want everything. There's beard vitamins to grow your beard, combs, boar bristle brushes, beard balm, beard oil, beard and face wash, and more, and razors and more for the beard needs. There's also 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner, body wash, loofahs, and more for your needs. Just go to my website, www.pigskinfrenzy.weebly.com. Click on the affiliations page. Click on the Beard Club logo. It will take you to the site. There's also a link tree. Link tree is at the YouTube description of this episode down below. There is also our link tree on X bio, my Instagram bio. Check out the bio on Instagram and X, and you can go to my link tree there. Click on the link tree, click on the Beard Club link, and it will take you to the site. Pre-Black Friday sale going on now at the Beard Club. 25% off with the code PREBFRY25. PREBFRY25. That is the code for 25% off pre-Black Friday sale going on for the Beard Club. Beard grooming kits and beard growthing kits. The Beard Club, proud partner of Pigskin Frenzy. Thank you for everything that you do for the podcast, and it's going to help your grooming needs and facial hair needs be met. College football day today. Bob the Tomato, like I said, has a show for you on this Election Day Frenzy. We're going to roll the dice. I'm warning you now, we are rolling the dice. If you have a pair of dice in your hand, like I don't, but I'm just going to, if you're watching me on YouTube, I'm just doing my fists in the air. I don't have a pair of dice, but we're going to act like we do. We're going to throw the dice on the ground because in some of my picks, I'm throwing the dice on this one. I'm going to throw the dice. I may get one game wrong, but you're going to see what I'm talking about here. I'm rolling the dice. However, 4-0. In my college football picks. I am laughing all the way to the freaking bank because no, I did not bet, but I will tell you what, getting these games right, I'm telling everybody right now, I'm a genius sometimes. I'm a genius. I can see the future. I can tell you what was going to happen. I saw what was going to go down. I can see the future. 4-0 in the Pigskin Frenzy picks. We're going to talk about all this, and we're going to discuss it. Maybe wrong about a few outcomes, but I got them right, 4-0 in all the game winners. We're going to talk about that. Frenzy rankings coming up here shortly. We're going to talk about that and the preview predictions for Week 11 for our top Pigskin Frenzy games coming up this weekend. Ready to rock and roll. Let's kick it off with our Week 10 recap. Let's start it off. Let's kick it off with SMU and Pitt. Let me go on and tell you something about this game. I said SMU was going to win if they did not turn the ball over. I thought SMU was going to win because I just think they were a little bit better on offense and on both sides of the ball than Pitt, and I was right because they were. Final score of this game was 48-25. Can I just tell you guys something? Just looking into the camera. Game wasn't close. From the start to finish, game was not close. SMU was all over this team. 48 SMU, 25 Pitt. Let's talk about SMU. They did mildly, and when I mean mildly better, I mean mildly better. Rhett Lashley and this team shows up when they need to, all right? This is the scary part about SMU. SMU, defending American Conference champions, are now in the ACC, trying to fight for that second place spot in the SEC. They're undefeated in conference play. They're now 8-1. Miami and SMU are on a collision course for the ACC championship right now. I thought SMU was a top 5 in conference standing projections this offseason. I was right outside the top 5. Boy, was I wrong. I was definitely wrong about this team coming in to this season for the ACC. They are running roughshod. They don't have Miami. They don't have Clemson. Clemson lost. That was a disaster. We're going to talk about that just a little bit. We're not going to discuss it further, but we'll talk about it in the Frenzy rankings. But circle moment here for SMU. Our circle moments. Let's talk about our circle moment here. Click the pen. Circle it right now. 0 turnovers. They did not commit a turnover. SMU played clean ball, both sides of the ball, no turnovers. Hallelujah, right? They did not turn the ball over. Here's where the blemishes come in. That's the 10 penalties, 85 yards. I think those penalties are going to add up. If you keep committing those penalties, you're going to lose another game. Could be the ACC championship if you make it that far. I don't know. But it could be that if you lose, if you commit those many penalties, you can lose one of those games. SMU was great on third down conversion, 7 for 14. They ran the ball well, 161 compared to their 103. Pitt did outgain them in passing yards, not by a whole lot, but they did. But the key moment and circle moment was the 0 turnovers. They played clean ball. They played physical ball. Brashard Smith was an absolute animal for this SMU Mustangs team. 23 carries, 161, 2 touchdowns. Kevin Jennings had 206 yards, 2 touchdowns on the through the air, 17 for 25. Not total, in completion and accuracy, not like 100% accurate, but it was good enough to win the ball game. They had a balanced offense. They were running roughshod. It was like 34-3 in the third quarter. It was a blowout from start to finish. When kickoff happened into the last bit, and when the clock hit 0 on the fourth quarter, kickoff, fourth quarter, hit 0, SMU. It was all SMU. I don't think Pitt led at all in the game. It was all SMU. They looked good on offense. They played really good defensively, too. They stopped SMU on third down. They were efficient on third down, 5 for 16, not too efficient, not like SMU was, but they were somewhat efficient. They stopped them on key third downs when they needed to. So SMU's defense stepped up in a lot of ways. Eli Holston did not know what to do on some plays. That's okay. It happens. Running the football for Pitt, they only had 103 yards. It was a good day total. Now, it wasn't the best day total for the team. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. 103 yards. SMU just read a lot of what Pitt was going to draw up. I think Pitt's play calling was a little bit predictable in this game. SMU looked really, really good, and they bought into it. Let me tell you about SMU. I was talking about Louisville this past time, and this past half of this season, and I wasn't looking at SMU. After SMU beat Louisville, because I got that game wrong too, I wasn't going to bet against SMU again, and I didn't bet against SMU again. I picked SMU to win, even though they had 6 turnovers against Duke. They play clean ball, and they show up when they need to show up. Have y'all noticed that about SMU? SMU is a legit playoff contender. No joke. They are a legit playoff contender. They are a solid football team. They have a shot at upsetting Miami. They have a shot at moving into that one of the top 4 seeds and being a conference bye as an ACC champion in the college football playoff if they wanted to be. SMU, Rhett Lashley is showing that they are a college football playoff team by what they are doing to teams. Kevin Jennings playing good ball. Brashard Smith running the ball really well on offense. That defensive line looking solid for this team. I'm telling you what, do not underestimate the Mustangs at all. If you underestimate them, I'm just saying, I'm going to shrug for you. I'm just saying, do that at your own risk. 48-25 was the final score. SMU won. Let's talk about Pitt for a little bit. Here's the circle moment for Pitt. We're not going to take long. We're going to go with the other 3 games here in a little bit because we got an honorable mention game that we got to cover here and talk about, even though we didn't cover it. But we're going to talk about it. We probably should have covered it. But Pitt, honorable circle moment for Pitt right here. Circling it down. 2 turnovers. They had 2 crucial turnovers in this game, and I think that was a big reason why they cost them. They couldn't run the ball effectively like SMU could. SMU was all over their defense. Their play calling was a little bit predictable in the game. I think Pitt is a solid football team. They have one loss on the year, 1 loss in the conference play. So they're third. Along with Clemson, because Clemson's a 2-loss team. They lost to Georgia, and then they lost to Louisville this past Saturday. That looked ugly, by the way. Pitt is tied with Clemson in conference play right now for third, kind of late, for essentially for third place. So in the ACC, so Pitt could remain Pitt can come back in it, but SMU's they're gonna need a lot of help. Pitt's a good football team. They're just gonna need a lot of help. They're gonna have to win out, beat Clemson because they got to play Clemson, beat Clemson, and then Pat Narduzzi and company has to rely on the help of SMU losing. So SMU's got to lose at least to Boston College, Virginia, or I think SMU plays, as far as I'm not mistaken, because they are on bye. They play Cal. So Boston College, Virginia, and Cal. They're on bye this Saturday, but they're going to have to rely on the help of those 3 to get in it. And that's not, like I said that with the Cincinnati Bengals Sunday, but for college, it's very essential. It is hard to lose a ball game and then rely on the help of others. I think a lot of teams in college football are at that point right now because it is November. Welcome to November, ladies and gentlemen. We're glad you're here. But you're relying on the help of others, and it's kind of hard to do that. But if you're Pitt, you're gonna have if you're Pitt, you're a Boston College. You're gonna have to win out. That's for sure. But you're also as you're a Boston College fan, you're a Virginia Cavalier fan, you're a Cal Golden Bear fan, all the way until the end. If they can just lose those 2 games and Pitt wins out, Pitt will go in and they will play Miami because I do not see Miami losing out. Final score of this game was 48-25. SMU's on bye this week. Pitt coming up this week. They have Virginia, a tough game against Virginia, a solid Virginia team. So let's watch out for Virginia. Excuse me. Let's watch out for Virginia. Let's watch out for them. Let's just, calm down on, focus on anything else. Pitt has to focus on Virginia. That's a solid team. 8 Eastern, 7 o'clock Central this Saturday. Virginia at Pitt. 48-25 was the final. SMU gets the win. Pitt back to the drawing board as they have to rely on the help of others to face Miami. So take that as you will. Let me get a drink of water because I just went off for a little bit on that game, and I'm a little bit out of breath. So let's talk. We're going to talk about some games here. We're going to talk about 2 games here. As I drink water, that really was refreshing. Quickly talk about Ole Miss and Arkansas because that game was honestly not really what I thought it was. I thought it was going to be a lot closer. It wasn't. Ole Miss, I got it right though. Final score of this game was 63-31 Ole Miss. 63-31 Ole Miss defeats Arkansas. Jordan Watkins had himself a day. Jordan Watkins had himself a day. Let's talk about Jordan Watkins for a second as I loaded up here the notes. Jackson Dart had himself a day with Jordan Watkins. He was 25 for 31, 515 yards and 6 touchdowns, 47 yards on the ground. 515 yards passing, 6 touchdowns through the air, 47 yards on the ground, 25 for 31. That is insane on the day. Jordan Watkins had 254 yards, 5 touchdowns. Arkansas secondary could not stop Jordan Watkins at all. 127 yards for Caden Lee off of 5 receptions. Excuse me, Desquan Wright had 99 yards, 2 touchdowns. This team was really doing really well. Running the ball wasn't all there. Pegasus had a rushing touchdown on the goal line, but they were relying more on the pass because Arkansas could not stop the aerial attack. They couldn't. They just really could not stop the aerial attack. Ole Miss had 9.1 yards per play against this Arkansas defense. They had 694 total yards through the air, 132 yards on the ground. They outrushed them. They had 562 yards passing as well. They were efficient on third down, 6 for 12. They did really well on third down. The penalties were not good, but I've kind of given up on the penalties for Ole Miss at this point. But it was a really good circle moment. I mean, there's multiple, but 2 circle moments here was the Jordan Watkins 254 yards and 5 touchdowns circle moment. If you hear me on the desk, circle moment there. There's also another circle moment. That's 0 turnovers. They did not turn the ball over once. They played clean football. They were more physical than Ole Miss was, and they ran roughshod defensively and offensively. It was a start to finish. Ole Miss was all over the Razorbacks. Lane Kiffin needed to prove a point, needed to make a statement. They're not out of it. In the AP poll, they have them at 16. You're going to see where I have them here in a little bit. They're 7-2. They needed this win to remain intact in not just really the SEC championship race, but the playoff race. I don't really think the SEC championship race is there. I think if they win out, it could be, but I think the main goal is to try to get into that at-large spot at the college football playoff, but they remain intact for that. They're 7-2. They're on tap to win 10 to 11 games. So at least 9. I think they can win at least 9. Ole Miss is looking solid on offense still. They're running roughshod, doing really well ahead of that Georgia game. I know Lane's mad about the early kickoff, the early afternoon kickoff. It was like 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 Central kick in Oxford on ABC Saturday. He's upset about that. Ole Miss, Alabama, LSU's Saturday night. It's 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central. Baton Rouge night game. We're going to talk about that later, but he's upset about that. But here's a really good chance for Ole Miss to show that we can upset Georgia, not at home, and be 8-2, and show that not only can we be physical, but we can dominate them with explosive plays. And Jordan Watkins and Jackson Dart and the receivers can create explosive plays. Ole Miss is about explosive plays, and they've been creating explosive plays ever since Jackson Dart was their starting quarterback 2 years ago. So that's my point. In this game, they were explosive. Arkansas could not combat that. That's the main problem. 63-31 was the final. Let's talk about Arkansas really quick before we go on to these other 2 games. Arkansas did not combat this well. They did not have an answer for Jordan Watkins. They didn't have an answer for Jackson Dart. They went slap off on this secondary. If you want to look at the circle moments here for Arkansas, there were many. They had good rushing. They had good passing. And they scored 31 points on this defense. Normally, 31 points and above would win you a game, but Ole Miss's offense is wired differently. So if you want to look at the 2 circle moments that Arkansas had blemishes on. Circle moment, 2 fumbles. They had 2 costly turnovers and penalties. 10 penalties for 95 yards. Undisciplined football, not playing clean football. It was hard for Arkansas to try to outscore with Ole Miss, and it was a very hard game for them because they don't have the offense necessarily right now to outscore with Ole Miss. I kind of had a feeling. I thought that the defense was going to be at least a little bit better in this game. and that's why it was going to be close, and then Ole Miss was going to run away with it late in the mid to late fourth quarter. Arkansas proved me wrong on that. They didn't have the defense at all to slow down Ole Miss's offense. So Arkansas kind of hurt themselves opening drive throughout the game in the first half. They let them score early. They let them start off fast. And if you let them start off fast and you let them cook fast, they're going to keep cooking and creating those explosive plays. Narrow the explosive plays. Find a way to slow down their explosiveness. If you can find a way to slow that down, that's the answer and a little bit of an antidote to try to slow down and beat Ole Miss. So Arkansas didn't have the defense that day to do it. And I think that was the thing right there. One more thing before I move on. Arkansas probably needed to win this game a little bit. For Ole Miss coming up, like I said, they have Georgia this Saturday in Oxford, 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 Central. The Arkansas schedule right now, if you want to look at it, coming up Saturday, they're on bye, so they have nobody. They have a crucial game in Fayetteville next Saturday morning, noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central. Next Saturday, they're on bye, and they have a home game against Texas. The old rivalry has been renewed next Saturday. That's a huge game. They're 5-4, right? 5-4. As far as I know, 5-4. They can go 5-5 in this game. The games they need to win, they have a shot at winning, are La Tech and Missouri. They can be 5-5. They need to win La Tech to go bowl eligibility, and they could go 6-6 or 7-5. That's the likely outcome for Arkansas in this right now. But the thing is, it's better. It was better than last season. It kind of saved Sam Pittman a little bit, but for how long? That's the real question. For how long? Don't know. I'm not going to talk about that very much, but for how long? A monumental upset would be great for Texas, or for Arkansas, I mean, but who knows? We'll have to see. Final score was 63-31. Ole Miss dominates Arkansas, and they play Georgia Saturday. Arkansas's on bye before they play Texas next weekend. Okay, next game up, we're going to talk about the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, formerly known as that. Didn't check my notes on that one last week, so my mistake. But nonetheless, Georgia versus Florida in Jacksonville. DJ Lagway was hurt in the game. Good news. It was a hamstring injury. It is not as significant as advertised, Billy Napier announced. So he has a shot at playing Saturday against Texas. So that's very, very good news for DJ Lagway and Florida. They really, really need him. Aiden Warner started the rest of the game for the team with Graham Mertz being out. So we're going to see how that goes. But nonetheless, that was the injury news out of the way. Let's talk about Georgia and Florida. Because I thought, as I, get my notes back up, I thought that this game was going to be a blowout. I thought that this game was going to be, Georgia was going to run roughshod. They did not. They did not run roughshod over the Gators in this one. It was a back-and-forth game. Florida brought it, and Billy Napier brought it. Georgia still won the game. I was right, but it was unexpected. Final score was 34-20. Georgia defeated Florida. 34-20. Georgia 34. Florida 20. Florida is now 4-4. Georgia is 7-1 as they get ready for Ole Miss Saturday. Let's talk about Georgia in this game. What I liked, and I'm going to be real. You're going to think, Joel, you should be praising Georgia. Georgia won. They did. But I didn't really like that game for Georgia. Let me tell you why. Defensively, solid football team. They're a very solid defensively. They played really, really good defense. They got the ball. 2 times, snagged 2 turnovers. A lot of sacks were in the game. They were very physical on defense. They ran the ball well on offense. It's 146 yards, 115 compared to 146 outgained them, 115. That was Florida's rushing. So they outgained them rushing-wise. Passing-wise, they outgained them. So they stat line, they dominated Florida, right? But it didn't really show play-wise until later in the game. First half was Florida was coming into their own. Defensively, they look good. They look solid defensively. They played physical on the line of scrimmage, and they won that way. Defensive line looked good. Linebackers looked good. C.J. Allen looked good. He got an interception in the game. He looked solid. Defensively, solid football team. Georgia's a playoff threat. If they keep winning, Georgia's could likely, if they just win out, go to the SEC championship in Atlanta. Georgia controls their own destiny. They're number 2 in the AP poll. I'll tell you where, before, we don't know where they're going to be tonight. I'll tell you where I have them, but in a little bit. But let's talk about what I did not like from Georgia. I did not like their offense. I thought they were a little bit stagnant on offense in a lot of areas. I think running the ball was okay. They had 145 yards total on the ground. But they did it. It was kind of hot and cold on the ground. If you want to be real, if you want to be real, Nate Frazier had 82 yards, 1 touchdown. He did okay. Dylan Bell had 33 yard long run. Phillips had a touchdown, 4 yards. Etienne had 31 yards. The attempts weren't the best. I mean, 19 carries for Nate Frazier. He cooked a little bit, but not too much. Carson Beck, 25 for 40. And here's the circle moment for Georgia: 25 for 40, 309 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions for Carson Beck. That's the circle moment, ladies and gentlemen. If you didn't hear that, circle moment. 3 interceptions for Carson Beck. 3 turnovers for Georgia. 3. We are tired of the interceptions. We're tired of the turnovers. It is lodged right now in the DNA of Carson Beck in Georgia. They are turning the ball over when they don't need to be. They are a solid football team. They are having trouble finding their identity a little bit on offense. They kind of slow down a little bit, and then they kind of heat up. Then they kind of slow down and kind of heat up. They're a hot and cold offense a little bit, and the turnovers play a big part in that. A lot of people were saying that Carson Beck is missing Lad McConkey and Brock Bowers at tight end. He might be. Yes, I will agree with that. I think Dominic Lovett, guys like that, could help out a lot. Oscar Delp, Lawson Lucky, guys like that could help out a lot through the air with Carson Beck. I think that those guys, Arian Smith, who's a solid and explosive receiver, probably the leading receiver for this Georgia football offense. I think this Bulldog offense can rely on him through the air, and Nate Frazier on the ground. Nate Frazier was a solid option Saturday. I would keep feeding him the ball. If you can do that and have a more balanced offense, you should be fine, right? You should be good. The turnovers are a big problem with Carson Beck right now. I think once playoff game comes, once he goes to the playoffs, I think Georgia's going to go to the playoffs. If or when Georgia goes to the playoffs, right, those turnovers happen, it's going to be a problem. They need to address it right now because it's going to be a problem down the road. Listen and go back. I'm going to bookmark 172. If this happens, and Georgia loses in the playoffs and doesn't go to the national championship, and if Carson Beck throws picks and they lose because of that, bookmark this episode and go back and listen to it. Go back and listen to it. He needs to get it corrected before the playoffs. He really does. The turnovers are an issue, and he needs to get it corrected. Carson Beck has to play better for this team to succeed. That's it. That's bottom line. Final score of this game was 34-20. That was my Georgia recap. Let's talk about Florida. Poor Florida. If you want to have a circle moment here, the circle moment here, they're third and 16 for third down efficiency. That's a circle moment for Florida right there. They weren't as efficient on third down. That's okay. They don't have the quarterback play needed. They had to do a whole different playbook because Aiden Warner was in there and DJ Lagway did not finish the game. He was hurt, did a hamstring. Thankfully, he has a shot at playing, and he's okay, and it's not as significant as I thought. But the turnovers were crucial because he's a freshman. He's a transfer freshman from Yale. Aiden Warner is. So Florida had a tough time moving the ball a little bit, and later in the game, at first they were moving the ball great. Later in the game, they had trouble. 3rd for 16. 2 turnovers. They had 5 penalties. They punted the ball 8 times. Not the best, and they had to change their whole playbook around. Later in the game, Florida's defense kind of got on its heels a little bit, and the running started going, and the balance started going for Georgia's offense, and late in the game, and Florida just couldn't do anything. They kind of just crashed and burned. That's okay. I kind of expected it a little bit, and I'm not trying to say, okay, Florida, that's bad on Florida. I'm being real. It's realistic. The schedule that Florida has is tough. It's tough because Saturday they got to go to Austin and play Texas. On the 16th, they got to go play LSU at home. Then they got to play Ole Miss at home. Then they got to travel to Doak Campbell and play Florida State. That's a win. That's the only win I can see them getting out of their schedule right now at this point in time. LSU is a possibility, and Florida State's a possibility. Maybe. They play Florida. They always play LSU tough. Now, the past couple of years hadn't been so tough. But, keyword, but, I think that in this game, for LSU and Florida, that could be a possibility, but they're more likely to beat Florida State than LSU. But this schedule's tough, and it's the start of the brunt schedule. I'm not saying get rid of Napier, all this stuff. It's not my decision. I don't know anything about that. But it's tough. It's tough for Florida here on out. They're turning DJ Lagway. It's not as significant as there, but he could re-injure the hamstring if need be, if it happens. And they're dueling with quarterbacks right now, and they're kind of running out of room here. So they're 4-4. They need 3 wins to go bowl eligible. 3 wins, and the schedule that they got is tough to win 3 games, especially against Texas, LSU, and Ole Miss. They can beat Florida State. That's 1 win, so that's 5. I'm sorry, they need 2 wins. Excuse me, 2 wins to go be bowl eligible. 2 wins, not 3. 2. They have 4 wins already. They need 2 wins. One of them's in Florida State, so they're going to win their last game. But the other 3, that's tough. So let's see what Florida's got, but I don't know. Final score, 34-20. Georgia beats Florida in Jacksonville. Georgia's got to play a lot better. They play Ole Miss Saturday. That's a tough game. So Georgia's going to have to play. Ole Miss is going to have to find a way to contend physically, but Georgia has got to try to protect the football. 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 Central kick on ABC. Florida has to play Texas, noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central on ABC in Austin. So that's Georgia versus Florida. Last but not least on week 10. Last but not least on week 10. Yeah, last but not least on week 10. Before we go to our honorable mention, because that was good. Ole Miss. No, I'm sorry. I keep saying Ole Miss. I keep thinking about Ole Miss, Georgia. Ohio State, Penn State. Ohio State, Penn State. Man, this was a game, right? I said that Ohio State was going to win. I go with Ole Miss again. I said Ohio State was going to win. The Buckeyes were going to win. Ohio State was going to get the dub. Penn State was going to lose close at home. I was right. It wasn't by a field goal, but it was by a touchdown. Final score of this game was Ohio State 20, Penn State 13. If you want to look at the notes, we can look at the notes. It's been happening. And, you know, the stat with James Franklin against, against, Ohio State. There's the stats, 20-13. James Franklin is, I think, as far as I know, if I can pull up this stat here and pull up this note for Penn State, they are under James Franklin. Penn State's now 1-10 against Ohio State. 1-10. James Franklin against big teams is hard to win. It's hard to win big games with James Franklin. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit. Hold on. Pause. Before we talk about James Franklin and Penn State, talk about the winner first, and that's Ohio State. Ohio State, with the talent that they got in the world, is still not a perfect football team, because nobody is in 2024, and that's okay. Everybody's flawed. Everybody's got flaws. Even Oregon, number 1 Oregon. Oregon, to me, though, is close to being probably the best team out of everybody right now that I'm seeing, and Dan Letting's got them on another level right now. Talk about that here in a little bit. But Ohio State, 20-13. They were down 10-0. Will Howard threw a pick 6. Penn State was up 10-0. But Ohio State started gaining a little bit of leeway. They started playing a little bit more physical on defense. They started playing, physical offensively, running the ball well for Ohio State. Junkins had 94. Quinshawn Junkins had 94 yards. Henderson had 54. Will Howard had 24 yards. They had 182 yards, 2 touchdowns, 16 for 24 was Will Howard. He completed the ball as well. Jeremiah Smith had 55 yards. Excuse me, Brandon Enos had 33 yards and a touchdown. Amike Abuka had 31 yards and a touchdown. They played really, really well on defense. They had, turnovers. Penn State, they defensively had turnovers. Ohio State had, and this is a circle moment for Ohio State, 2 turnovers compared to Penn State's 1 turnover, and still won. That's the circle moment of the game. Ohio State on paper, did play better in total yards and yards-wise. And on paper played better, but the turnovers were not as good. But if you look at everything else on paper, for Penn State, it wasn't as good as Ohio State, and it translated onto the field throughout the game. After 10-0, Penn State took its foot off the gas, which you shouldn't do, and Ohio State came in and said, you know what, 10-0's nothing. We're going to come back. We're going to win. It's still early. We got this. We're more talented than they are. And they are. They're more talented than Penn State. You're going to think, dude, really? You're going to say that right now? Yeah, I'm going to say that because Ohio State is. They're more talented on both sides of the ball. They ran the ball a lot better, and then they scored. They were more efficient on third down, 5.6 yards per play compared to their 5.1 yards. They outrushed them, 176 yards compared to their 120. They were very similar, but not all the way. Penn State kind of hurt themselves in penalties. Ohio State played some clean football. Ohio State was ready in this game. They pushed, after that 10-0 lead, they came back and pushed them around the line of scrimmage, and Ohio State was more physical than Penn State on the line of scrimmage, even though Penn State's defensive line is nasty. Penn State's defense did get to Will Howard. They sacked him. They played really, really well in this game, Penn State's defense did, and they stopped him on a lot of plays, but Ohio State kept fighting back. They showed fight in this game. If you're thinking that Ryan Day didn't win this wasn't a big game for Ryan Day, he's used to beating Penn State. He is used to beating Penn State. But this was a very big game for Ryan Day. He needed to show that in a top 5 matchup, top 4, top 5 matchup, that he was superior to James Franklin and Penn State. And he showed that. Physically, talent-wise, Ohio State did it. Ohio State is now number 3. They're 7-1. I'll tell you where I have them. Don't know where they're going to be tonight, but I'll show you where I have them in the Frenzy rankings here in a little bit. We can talk about it all day. Ohio State was just better. Ohio State this Saturday has Purdue, noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Most likely going to be on Fox. Purdue at Ohio State. They at Purdue. This coming up Saturday. That should be a win before the big showdown. Well, I would have think. No, excuse me. Before, 2 weeks before the big showdown against Indiana. Keep an eye on that Indiana game. Kirk Zanetti, I still see you. Keep an eye on that game because that is going to be something to watch out for. They had Northwestern. They have Indiana next. After Northwestern, they have Purdue Saturday. It was 20-13. Final score was Ohio State. They played really, really well. That was my recap of Ohio State. Let's talk about Penn State. They're 1-10 against Ohio State. If we can if I can find some stats here. I really didn't have the notes pulled up, but let me just, pull up everything. Pull up everything here. Sorry for the long pause. I'm pulling up here. Okay. 1-10 versus Ohio. This is per Fanatic Sportsbook on X. These are the stats. James Franklin at Penn State is 1-7 versus top 10 teams at home. 6-10 versus ranked teams at home. 1-9 versus top 5 teams. 1-10 versus Ohio State. Those are the stats. You're saying, okay, James Franklin can't win a big game. Penn State is feeling right now. When is it going to be our time? Let me get back to that here in a little bit. Let me talk about the stats of this ball game because I want to tell you what happened. You were up 10-0. You kind of set your foot off, let your foot slip off the gas a little bit. Stat wise, you had penalties, five penalties for 45 yards. You had a crucial turnover in the end zone, which was going to be a touchdown. 3 for 11. That's the circle moment right here for Penn State. 3 for 11 on third down. The Ohio State's defense got to you guys. You were pushed around up front. The offense right now, you rely Tyler Warren, who runs the ball well, and you rely on Nick Singleton as your receiver. That is the definition of Penn State at its finest right now on offense. It's not how it's supposed to be, but it is. Offense is a little bit, in big games at least, is a little bit out of sync, and they started showing a little bit of out of syncness pretty much a little bit since, after Illinois. Wisconsin, for sure they did, but Drew Aller was hurt, so we'll get it. It's a pass there. But Penn State in big-time games with James Franklin. James Franklin is a good coach. You're going to think right now, Joel, after the stats you just read, how was he a good coach? He just lost to Ohio State again. You just read off the stats for Penn State in this ball game. Yes, they weren't as physical as Ohio State in this ball game, but I'm going to tell you this. He's a good coach. He wins the games that he needs to win. They're consistently in it every year, Penn State is. But they're not great. Penn State's good enough, but against a Oregon or a Penn State, Oregon maybe, if they play Oregon soon, or an Ohio State, or a top team like an Ole Miss in the Peach Bowl, they're not at that level. And you're thinking, Joel, when is it going to be our time? As a Penn State fan, when is it going to be our time? When is it going to be our time? And it could be your time one day. It was your time in 2016. You caught a break. 2016 was the last time you beat Ohio State with Saquon Barkley at running back and Trace McSorley at quarterback. Y'all went to the Rose Bowl. You got robbed out of a playoff spot, which y'all should have been in. But that's hearsay. But when is it going to be our time? I can't answer that. But it can be your time, but you have to win the big one. You got to win big games. You have to beat Ohio State. You got to win the top games that you think that you can win, but haven't been. And that's how you know, okay, this could be our time. Final score of this game was 20-13. I had a feeling Ohio State was going to win this game. I just thought about it. Penn State is 6th right now. We'll see where I have them here in a little bit. Ohio State 20, Penn State 13. When's going to be their time? I do not know. I don't know. Ohio State Saturday has Purdue. Penn State this Saturday, 8 Eastern, 7 Central. Saturday night has Washington. Washington at Pitt. Happy Valley. State College is going to be rocking. They have Washington coming to town Saturday night. That's a winnable game for Penn State for sure. 2013, Ohio State defeats Penn State in a big game this past Saturday morning. That was the Week 10 recap. Let's talk about one honorable mention after a volcanic upset Saturday, and then we'll move on to the Frenzy rankings, and then we'll talk about the Week 11 preview predictions for this weekend. Okay, it was a volcanic Saturday. It was. Eruption. Louisville beat Clemson. Who knew that was coming, right? If you want to look at some more, one big upset that happened, though, that we're going to talk about, Washington beat USC. USC lost. We're going to talk about one big one that happened that, in a way, A&M fans were a little bit cocky on. They talked a little bit about going into a dangerous atmosphere, dangerous game, a little bit too high on their horses, and this is me coming up, right, for saying, hey, right, I thought they were going to win this game myself. Probably should have covered this one, but I said that they earned the win. They've waited a long time for that LSU win, and they had the right to talk about LSU. I didn't say they had the right to talk about South Carolina just yet, and they kind of ran their mouths just a tad bit too much. It was a game against a South Carolina team that was a dangerous team. I knew they were a dangerous team. I knew that South Carolina, honestly, was a few games and a few bad calls away for being in the spot that A&M was in, 7-1. Because South Carolina is that good of a team, especially defensively. Defensive line, probably the best defensive line in the SEC. The only team that they could not really get to a whole lot and didn't really get to, surprisingly, was LSU. And we're going to talk about this game now here. South Carolina and Texas A&M. I thought A&M was going to win. I thought Marcel Reed was going to do well. A lot of people did in a hostile environment. Start to finish, final score, 44-20. South Carolina defeats and upsets Texas A&M. They dominated Texas A&M, and it wasn't close. It wasn't close. Nobody in the SEC is perfect. Everybody in the SEC has at least one loss. In conference play and overall record, nobody in the SEC is perfect. Now, at South Carolina, the battle in the matchup was defensive line for South Carolina compared to their offensive line. Can they get to Marcel Reed? Everyone said that South Carolina's defensive line couldn't get to Marcel Reed, and their running package against A&M's defense wasn't going to be good enough. Everybody was wrong because it was. South Carolina sacked Marcel Reed, and they sacked him pretty good. I kind of want to look at, if we can pull it up, how many times were the sacks in this game. If we can look at the recap and look at the team stats. For both teams, circle moment for South Carolina was the defensive line. Circle moment for South Carolina was honestly penalties. They usually are really penalized. That's a big circle moment here. They got to Marcel Reed. They sacked Marcel Reed. That's a circle moment. Another circle moment, and the main one was the penalties. 3 penalties for 25 yards. Very clean game to their standards because they've had a tendency of blowing games a lot. But after that bye week, right now the best team in South Carolina is South Carolina, I think, compared to Clemson. I think they have a shot at beating Clemson. This is a team right now that they could be an A&M spot and they could be a playoff team. I'm not joking because I think that South Carolina could be that good. And I'm not joking. South Carolina's a good football team. They're 5-3. 5-3. They have Vandy Saturday, and who knew that Vanderbilt and South Carolina was gonna be a solid football game come Saturday afternoon on SEC Network? But it is. They weren't as efficient on third down. They had one turnover. 1 minute less in time of possession. Weren't as efficient on third down, but they played clean ball. A&M didn't. And the battle was between running the football, and pressuring Marcel Reed and taking away the legs of Marcel Reed, and they did that. South Carolina is a solid team, a solid football team, and they have earned everything that they have done. They have earned everything in these games. They are a few calls away from beating LSU, beating Alabama, Ole Miss. We're going to let that slide. They should be where South Carolina is. In a lot of games, they should be where A&M is. I'm not joking. I'm being real. South Carolina's a solid football team, a very solid football team, and they played like it. Solid defensive line. They ran really well. Big circle moment. 286 rushing yards compared to their 144. They ran the ball well. Granted, A&M lost Le'Veon Ball for the season. Tough break there with a knee injury. Tough break there for A&M. And my thoughts and prayers go out to Le'Veon Ball, and hopefully he recovers and has a speedy recovery. And thoughts and prayers go out to him, his family, and the A&M community there. But they outrushed them 286 to 144. They did not stop their running game at all. I was watching the game, and I was like, they are running the ball all over them. A&M's letting the crowd noise get to them. It was a definition of a trap game, and they were trapped. They were trapped in this ball game. South Carolina wins 44-20. Let's talk about A&M really quick before we move on to the rankings. Did not cover this game, but I said we're going to talk about it. A&M, first place in the SEC, beats LSU, high horse. Everybody was saying, good luck to defending Marcel Reed. Not only did they beat Marcel Reed, they dominated Marcel Reed. Dominated him. Marcel Reed wasn't a factor at all to South Carolina's defense. South Carolina's defense was, all over this offense. especially in the second half. It got worse in the second half for A&M. The worst thing, and this is the circle moment for A&M, circle moment, the tackling. I do not know what happened, but that was the worst display of tackling I've seen in a long time. Saturday night was bad. Very poor tackling by Texas A&M. They honestly could have stopped Raheem Sanders and Rocket Sanders and Lenora Sellers in the backfield. But they didn't, because they jived and went for a first down, and plus, even for touchdowns. They've missed tackles and they ran it for touchdowns and scored on A&M because of tackling. Poor tackling. That's the circle moment for Texas A&M. Circle moment also, another circle moment was turnovers, 2 turnovers, and the penalties. 7 penalties for 68 yards. Not good for Texas A&M. This is a not so good night. They were not ready for this game at all. Point blank. Both sides of the ball. Tackling, running the ball. Play calling was too generic. It was almost like they were trying to do, my dad said they should do, and my dad, he looked at me as we were watching games together, and he said what they should do is they should do more pitch options and speed options. I said, Dad, they've been doing that the whole night. They've abandoned it because it wasn't working. South Carolina was getting to it. And then they tried another approach. It didn't work either. They got some yards. Yeah, I mean, 206 yards passing, 144. But South Carolina held up really well on all aspects of the game. 530 yards, total yards compared to A&M's 350. 244 passing compared to their 206. 286 compared to their 144. That's their circle moment. And then 7.6 yards per play compared to their 5.0 yards per play. So for A&M, poor tackling. They couldn't get the job done, and they were not ready for this game mentally. They weren't. Injuries happened, and it was a horrible day of injury, especially with Le'Veon Moss. Again, thoughts and prayers with him and the A&M community for that one. But they couldn't stop him. They couldn't stop them on defense. They were poor tackling. They weren't ready. I'm still sold on Mike Elko. I'm not saying that at all. A&M's going to be fine. A&M's going to be better. They're going to come back stronger. They're going to be fine. If they play like that, though, Kyle Field or not, Texas can beat this team. If they play the way they did if they play the way they did in the second half against LSU, the whole game against Texas, it will be a ball game. But this team playing against Texas, you can kiss the SEC championship hopes goodbye, and potentially kiss your playoff hopes goodbye. This put a damper in the playoff hopes for A&M. Losing because they already have 2 losses. They shouldn't have lost this game, and they did. Final score is 44-20. A&M, or South Carolina's got Vandy coming up Saturday, 4:15 Eastern, 3:15 Central in Nashville, in Vandy. Solid game. Cannot wait between this, in this. I cannot wait. A&M Saturday is on bye. They do not have anybody. Next week, they have New Mexico State. 7:45 Eastern, 6:45 Central on SEC Network. New Mexico State at A&M on SEC Network next Saturday night. A&M is still ranked in the AP poll. This is how I think the AP poll is rigged. South Carolina is not ranked. How dare they not rank South Carolina? Shame on them for not ranking South Carolina, because South Carolina is a ranked football team, hands down. And I'm going to tell you here in a little bit, I have them in the Frenzy rankings. Spoiler alert, they're in my rankings. Are they high up on the list? No. They're not like in the top 10, probably not even in the top 15. But they're in there because they're a solid football team. Point blank, solid football team. 44-20 was the final score of that one. South Carolina defeated Texas A&M in a huge game. That was the Week 10 recap, monumental upsets. Let's talk about the AP poll, and then let's go to our first set and unveil our first set of Frenzy rankings, and then we're going to talk about our Week 11 preview and predictions, the top matchups for Week 11. Cannot wait. I'm excited for the top games that we're doing and we're covering this weekend here for college football. So, let's talk about our AP poll. As I'm trying to get the notes up here on my device. Here we go. This is the last time I will be talking about the AP poll. I'm going to be just doing the Frenzy rankings here on out. The first set, I'm going to compare them to my rankings and what I have. Number 1 is Oregon. Tough win against Michigan. They're 9-0. Georgia, tough win against Florida. They're number 2. Ohio State is 3 after a tough win against Penn State. Miami is 9-0. Number 4 is Miami after a tough win against Duke. They're 9-0. Texas is 7-1 after a bye. No game this past week. They played Florida this Saturday morning. Penn State falls to 6. They are 7-1. They fall 3 spots after losing to Ohio State, a close one there. Number 7 is Tennessee after surviving a close one against Kentucky at home. Number 7 is them. And number 8 is Indiana. Indiana is number 8. Hello, Indiana. Hello, Kirk Cignetti. You're in the top 10. You're in the top 12 for the college football playoff. Hopefully tonight you will be in the top 12 for the college football playoff. You're a solid football team. Kirk Cignetti, 9-0, tied for most school wins in program history. Cannot wait to see Indiana play Michigan this coming up Saturday. Number 9 is BYU. I see you, BYU Cougars. Number 8-0 in the Big 12, doing things in the Big 12 and leading the Big 12 right now. Number 10 is Notre Dame, 7-1, dropping 2 spots. Number 11. Alabama, after a bye, they play LSU in a crucial playoff eliminator matchup Saturday night in Death Valley. ABC, Saturday night on SEC on ABC, Saturday Night Football. Number 12 is BYU. BYU, 7-1, solid game against San Diego State, and they won. Ashton Jeanty played really, really well. Still my Heisman front runner. I don't know about your guys, but number 12, Boise State, and that rounds out the playoff top 12 for the AP poll. Number 13 right outside, and the first 2 teams out. If the playoffs were today, the first 2 teams out would be SMU at 13. I have them a little bit higher. Number 13, 8-1 after a tough win against Pitt, and LSU, number 14, after a tough win, after a bye week and after a tough loss against A&M. They're on bye. They play this Saturday night against Alabama. Coming off of a bye is number 14, LSU. Number 15, Texas A&M, after a tough loss against South Carolina. 16, Ole Miss after a blowout win against Arkansas. Number 17 is Iowa State. Tough loss against Texas Tech. We're going to talk about Texas Tech here in a little bit. Tough loss against Texas Tech. Iowa State falls from 11 to 17. They're 7-1, 1 loss in conference play. 8-0 in the American Athletic Conference. Number 1 in that Group of 5 conference is Army. Army is 18. Bryson Daly in that offense is solid passing game that they got going, which is pretty surprising. Watch out for Army and the Knights. Number 19 is Clemson after a shocking loss to Louisville at home. Number 20 is Wazoo, 7-1. Washington State. Wazoo is 20. Colorado is 21. 6-2. They play Texas Tech Saturday. Number 21 is Colorado. Number 22 is Kansas State after a shocking upset loss to Houston. Big win for Willie Fritz over Kansas State. This drops over Kansas State. This drops the Wildcats to 7-2 and to 22 in the AP poll. 23 is Pitt after a tough loss against SMU. They go from 18 to 23. Number 24, anchor down. Vandy is back in the rankings after a huge win against Auburn. Another win against Hugh Freeze for Diego Pavia. Number 24 is Vanderbilt, 6-3. Bowl eligible for Vanderbilt and Clark Lee. SEC Coach of the Year, by the way, Clark Lee, in my opinion. And number 25, Louisville, is 6-3. The honorable mentions for the AP poll are Missouri, South Carolina, Tulane, UNLV. Here is where I call crap. And I'm saying that word again. It is crap because I have my rankings a little bit different. That's the AP poll. We're not going to, that was the last time we're going over the AP poll. We're going to go over our frenzy rankings for now on this show. Here are my honorable mentions. Missouri, on the frenzy rankings, my honorable mentions are Missouri, Tulane, UNLV, and Washington State. I don't have Wazoo at all in my rankings. Let me tell you who I have in the first ever frenzy rankings. Our first frenzy rankings of the college football of our season for college football. Frenzy playoff, college football playoff rankings, week 11 before the show tonight, 7 Eastern, 6 Central on ESPN. The top 25 rankings for and the top 12 projection model is happening. Here's my top 12 right now. Here is the top 25 for the Frenzy playoff rankings. You've wanted it. You've asked for it. Here we go. Here are my Frenzy rankings. The first set of Frenzy rankings until December 8th, right? Until Sunday, December 8th, and the last bit of it on Sunday, December 8th, and before the playoffs are announced. Frenzy rankings for Week 11 go like this. Number 25, Clemson. I have Clemson at 25 in my rankings because of that blowout loss. Now, they're still in the hunt, but I put them at 25 because that was a bad loss. Very bad loss. 11 to 25 on my rankings. They dropped tremendously. Not a good loss, not a good look. 25 is Clemson. 24 is Pitt. They had a similar loss, had a bad loss, but I think Pitt, record-wise, is better than Clemson. 24. 23, anchor down. I got Vandy at 23. I got them a spot ahead from the AP poll. Anchor down, 6-3. Vandy got to play South Carolina. 22, South Carolina. I have South Carolina in the rankings. I think South Carolina is a top 25 team. Regardless, I think South Carolina is a good football team that deserve to be ranked. I got them in my rankings. 22 was South Carolina. 21, Kansas State. I think Kansas State lost that game. Not a good look, but not as bad as everybody thinks it makes it out to be. I still have them ranked 21. They lose again, they're out, though. 21, Kansas State. 20 is Louisville. They've entered the rankings after a big win against Clemson. 20 is Louisville. Number 19, Colorado. Colorado got a huge game against Texas Tech Saturday. We're covering that game, by the way, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit, but they are number 19. They've been doing really, really good in the Big 12. Watch out for them in the Big 12 because another mess up, Colorado's going to, and they keep winning, Colorado's in the Big 12 championship game in Arlington. I'm just saying. Number 19, Colorado. Number 18, Army. Undefeated in the American Athletic Conference. You're going to think, are you serious? You have Army at 18? I'm going to get to that debate here in a little bit. Right now, Army is at 18 because of, I think team is good, but I don't think they're better than Boise State right now. Number 18 is Army. Number 17, Iowa State. I think Iowa State is in the right spot after losing to Texas Tech. I think they're just right out there. 17 is Iowa State. Number 16, LSU. LSU's 14 on the list on the AP poll. I have them at 16. I have them under A&M and Alabama right now. I think that that loss to A&M put a damper, not too bad of a damper, put a damper on the SEC title hopes. But I do think there's room now that A&M lost. I think there is room for LSU to now come back in it. So it's a wide open race again now that A&M lost, and it opens up the door for LSU to sneak back in if they win Saturday night. 15 A&M. I think A&M goes from 10 to 15. I think that loss really did put a damper on things. It kind of opened up the race even more again, and it kind of hurt A&M a little bit. So 15 is A&M. 14 is Alabama. 16 and 14 play each other Saturday in my game. Top 15 showdown between LSU and Alabama. I think that it's a playoff eliminator game for sure. Whoever wins, it is a definition of a loser leaves town game. So we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. Feinbaum and everybody else is right. It's a loser leaves town type of game. It's a duel at high noon type of showdown. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit. 16 LSU, 14 Alabama. 13's Ole Miss. I have Ole Miss ahead of LSU, A&M, and Alabama. I think they are Alabama and Ole Miss are the first two teams out of my rankings. Ole Miss has played good. I think that if they lose again, they're going to drop. But right now, 13 after that impressive win against Arkansas, they're 13. Here are the top 12. The top 12 for in the Frenzy rankings. Number 12, Boise State. They are the top. They are the highest ranked Group of 5 team in my ballot because I think Boise State's a solid football team. That running game is electric with Ashton Jeanty. I think they play more of a heavier schedule than Army, and they're a better team. I think if they played Army, I think Boise State would beat Army. That's just how I view it. So right now, Boise State is 12. 11 is Notre Dame, treading carefully at the at-large spot. If they have another loss, it's going to be a little bit different. They're going to be out because they're independent. 11 is Notre Dame because, to me, they're independent right now. Number 10 is SMU. I think SMU is solely in it. I think SMU is in that at-large spot, and they're a solid football team. Pony up. I'm an SMU guy right now with Rhett Lashley. Number 10 is SMU. Number 9, BYU. I think BYU is an interesting case here. They're undefeated in the Big 12. They lead the Big 12 right now, and if they win the Big 12, they will be a bye in the playoff. in the top 4 of the playoffs. So BYU could win it and be a bye, but they're number 9 in my rankings right now. Number 8 and 7, you're going to think, really? Indiana's 8, Penn State 7. I think Indiana is 8, even though they're undefeated, and Penn State 7. I think right now Penn State has the slightest edge over Indiana. I think if Indiana keeps impressing, I'm going to have Indiana jump over Penn State. And obviously, if they beat Ohio State, Indiana's going to skyrocket, right? So Indiana's 8, Penn State 7. I just think right now Penn State has a slight edge, even though they just lost against Ohio State. They have a slightest edge against Indiana right now. But Indiana is 8, and they're in the playoffs in my rankings. So Indiana's 8, Penn State 7. Tennessee is 6. I think Tennessee, despite that scary game against Kentucky, they're still 6. Good resume building. They got to play Georgia. Well, it's going to be tough. They got to play Georgia, but let's see how that happens there. 6 is Tennessee. 5 is Texas. 5 is Texas. They play Florida Saturday. Let's see how they do against Florida. They got Texas. I think Texas is 5. Solid football team, one-loss team. They didn't look. They played a tough Vanderbilt team on bye. They got to rebound and see what they can do against Florida. Number 4 is Miami. I think Miami is the ringleader of the ACC. They are, for me, at this point, they are a shoe-in in the playoffs. I think one of the playoff spots goes to Miami, and they will be in the college football playoff. Number 3, 2, and 1. 3, Georgia. I think Georgia is at 3, and Ohio State is at 2. I think that win against Penn State, Ohio State looked a little bit better than Georgia, and Ohio State's number 2 because of that win against Penn State. I think Georgia did not look so good on offense to the point where it dragged me down a little bit for them to go to number 3. I think they got to impress a little bit more for me to put them back in the top 2. Number 3 is Georgia. The turnovers have to stop. They're a little bit stagnant. I think number 3 is Georgia. Number 2 is Ohio State. And number 1 in my frenzy rankings for the first set is Oregon. By far, Oregon is the best team in the college football right now. They're properly ranked. Their resume looks good. They have a tough win against Ohio State. They could win a Big Ten championship. They are physical. They run the ball well. They beat a ranked Illinois team. They've beaten ranked teams. They beat Boise State, who's a ranked team. They've beaten playoff contenders, Ohio State and Boise State. Even though it's a group of 5, they still beat a playoff contender. And why not? They look good doing it. Oregon's number 1. By far right now, the most physical and best team in college football is Oregon. They have flaws, sure, but everybody has flaws. But right now, they just look a little bit better than everybody else. Number 1, Oregon right now is the best team in college football, number 1 in the first set of the Frenzy playoff rankings. These will be posted tomorrow, Wednesday, on X and Instagram. So check out X and Instagram at pigskin_frenzy. I'm going to drop the first set of rankings on Wednesday. You're going to let me know what you guys think on the comments down below of the Frenzy playoff rankings. But those are the Frenzy playoff rankings for week 11. I'm going to drop them on the Instagram and X machine on at pigskin_frenzy. Go and check that out. Like those posts and comment down below. Who do you have in your playoff rankings, top 25 for college football? Those are the Frenzy rankings for this week. We will have updated ones next week throughout until December 8th and until the playoffs and college football season is over. Okay, that's done. Let's talk about and let's get ready for the week 11 preview predictions. We're going to preview and predict the top matchups for week 11, our Pigskin Frenzy games. We're going to talk about it. We're going to end it on that note and conclude our episode of Pigskin Frenzy here on Election Day Frenzy here for this episode. Let's kick things off for our preview and predictions for week 11 with Miami at Georgia Tech. You're covering Miami and Georgia Tech. Yes, I am. Interesting of what happened last year. Don't think that's what's going to happen this year, but who knows? 9-0 Miami, coming off of a huge win against Duke. Georgia Tech, 5-4, trying to pick up a monumental upset to become bowl eligible in their season. Let's see who wins it in Atlanta. Bobby Dodd Stadium, here we go. Miami keys are simple. Number one, start off fast. If you start off fast and put this Georgia Tech's defense on its heels, I think you got the win here, and it should be pretty easy for this Miami offense. Number two, force turnovers. You snagged 4 turnovers against Duke. If you can if you can snag turnovers and let Georgia Tech turn the ball over against you, everything should be fine in this game, and you should probably get a win here in Atlanta. Number three, beat them through the air. Georgia Tech currently is 60th in passing yards allowed in college football. Not too bad, but not the best. Cam Ward currently is 3rd in passing yards per game in college football, and he is currently 2nd in passing yards overall in college football. And that's where the key here is there. That's the big key. Cam Ward is top 3 in passing in college football and 60th in passing yards. That's a huge key there. If you can try to figure out a way to slow down Cam Ward through the air and kind of just minimize those explosive plays that Miami creates, then the Georgia Tech's got a shot. But if you can just keep being Cam Ward and create explosive plays, you got to win here if you're Miami. So those are the top 3 keys for Miami. Let's talk about the keys here for Georgia Tech. Number one, force turnovers. If you can find a way to get Miami to turn the ball over on the ground or through the air with a pick, it could be a ball game. Let's just see. Number two, protect the football. If you can protect the football and not turn the ball over as much, you should be good in this ball game. And number three, pretty simple, find a way to get to Cam Ward. If you can find a way to get to Cam Ward and pressure him, sack him, cause some chaos around him, make him turn the ball over, you have a huge shot and winning this ball game. Who do I have winning this ball game? I'm going to be real. I think Miami is too explosive. I think Georgia Tech's a good football team. However, I think Miami is too explosive. I think the first quarter is going to be close. I think Miami starts to run away with it in the second quarter and wins the ball game. I think they're too explosive on offense for Georgia Tech's liking. That bye week really did help Miami, even though Duke played them close. Duke's just a good football team. I think Miami gets the win here. They run the score up. I think it's going to be a blowout win for Miami here, and they go 10-0, and Georgia Tech goes 5-5. Miami gets the win. I think it's going to be 48-17. Miami 48, Georgia Tech 17. Miami defeats Georgia Tech, and Miami gets the win over Georgia Tech in this game. Next up, Colorado and Texas Tech. Colorado at Texas Tech. Colorado 6-2. Texas Tech 6-3. Texas Tech's coming off of a huge win and a huge upset win against Iowa State, knocking them off as they were undefeated, presenting a huge path for Colorado to get back in it, and maybe for Texas Tech to get back in it if they can win it. Colorado, momentum win, coming off of huge wins against Cincinnati, coming off a good, just on a roll right now in the Big 12. Texas Tech coming off of a huge win. Against Iowa State. Let's see whose momentum continues, and let's see who can pick up that momentum even more. Colorado's keys are pretty simple in Lubbock. Number one, find a way to slow down Taj Brooks. Brooks currently is 9th in rushing yards in college football. He is a solid running back for the Red Raiders. If you can find a way to slow him down and slow down that running game, it should be a easy sailing for Colorado in this game. Number two, win on third down. 7 for 13 on third down versus Cincinnati. If you were 7 for 13 on third down against Cincinnati, you were very efficient on third down against that Bearcats team. If you can be efficient and be just as efficient in this game, you have a strong chance at winning this game on the road. Number three, win the time of possession battle. If you can keep Taj Brooks in this Red Raider offense off the field, and you should stay on the field, win the time of possession battle. Coach Prime, Shadur Sanders, and Travis Hunter can get a win here and get the job done in Lubbock and increase their Big 12 title hope chances in the conference. So those are the Colorado keys for me in this game. Here are Texas Tech's keys. Number one, establish that running game with Taj Brooks. Colorado's currently 80th in rushing defense in college football. Texas Tech is currently 58th in college football in rushing offense. So if they can run the ball with a man that's top 10 in rushing yards and get him cooking and get him white hot, Texas Tech could probably win this ball game. I just think it's going to be a little bit tougher because Colorado's defense is physical, but I think they could probably do it. So let's see if they can establish the run with Taj Brooks. That's a key here for them and a window right there to open up to win this ball game. Number two, pressure Shadur Sanders. Pressure him, make him turn the ball over, and kind of pressure him, turn the ball over, and kind of, cause some chaos with Shedeur Sanders. Make it turn the ball over, sack him, find a way to rattle him, and pressure Shedeur Sanders into making some mistakes. Number 3, contain Travis Hunter. Slow him down. If you can find a way to contain him a little bit, slow him down, and stop him from creating explosive plays, because he is a kid that will make explosive plays on both sides of the ball. Heisman hopeful, Travis Hunter. Then I think you can be fine in this ball game. Who do I got winning this ball game? You see my fist on YouTube? That's me holding the dice. I think Colorado is going to present a good challenge in this game. I think they have a shot at winning. However, I think Texas Tech has got a lot of momentum right now. I think Taj Brooks is a solid running back. Right now, the odds are Colorado's odds-on favorite to win this game. I'm going to roll the dice and go against the odds. I'm going to have Texas Tech win this ball game. I got Texas Tech defeating Colorado in this game. And that's not me saying I'm not high on Colorado. I am a little bit more higher on Colorado now that they have won a lot of games this season. I am going to go with Texas Tech in this ball game. I'm going to roll the dice here, throw it up, roll the dice, and I got Texas Tech winning. Texas Tech 33, Colorado 30 in Lubbock. They pull off the home upset. The Red Raiders get the win. The Red Raiders go to 7-3. Colorado goes to 6-3. Texas Tech defeats Colorado, and Texas Tech gets the win over Colorado in a home upset. So give me Texas Tech to win in a home upset. I'm going to roll the dice there and pick the Red Raiders to win that one outright. 2 more games before we conclude today's episode of Pigskin Frenzy, because we're running overtime in this episode for sure. Georgia at Ole Miss. 7-1 Georgia at Ole Miss, 7-2. Georgia come off of a good win against Florida. Ole Miss coming off a high wave of momentum, rolling on a high wave of momentum after beating Oklahoma and beating Arkansas, badly beating Arkansas, and has a high wave of momentum. Huge home game for Ole Miss. Georgia, number 3 in my rankings and number 2 in the AP's rankings. We'll see what they are ranked tonight. Comes into town in Oxford. Georgia at Ole Miss. Georgia has to play a little bit better on offense. Ole Miss has to play really physical in this game as well. So something's got to give here in this ball game in Oxford. 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 Central kick on ABC Saturday afternoon. SEC on ABC. Okay, Georgia's keys are pretty simple. Number 1, find a way to slow down their playmakers. If Trey Harris is playing, find a way to slow him down and contain him. Contain the running game. Contain Jordan Watkins and Caden Lee for sure. And find a way to get Jackson Dart. If you can find a way to slow everybody down and contain their playmakers, you got a shot at winning this ball game in Oxford. Number 2, win the line of scrimmage battle. Out-physical them, just like last year. Out-physical them. Play more physical ball than they do, and then you have a shot at winning this game. That is number 2. Huge game there. Win the line of scrimmage battle. Be physical on both sides of the ball up front. Number 2, protect the football. Key. I am beating a dead horse with this key. Protect the football. Carson Beck cannot commit as many turnovers, because this is a game where they could probably lose if they commit as many turnovers as they did. Number 3, protect the football. 3 turnovers versus Florida last week. He has had 10 or more turnovers in the last 5 games. No, sir. Protect the football, Carson Beck, in this game. That's number 3. Those are the big keys for Georgia, and get hot on offense for sure. Number 1 for Ole Miss. These are the keys for Ole Miss. Number 1, force some turnovers. You got to do what Carson Beck's been doing. Just get him to turn the ball over. If he can get some turnovers, this could be a good shot for you to win this game if you capitalize off those turnovers as well, which I think Ole Miss can. Number 2, win on third down. They are currently 36th in third down conversion percentage in college football. That is pretty solid in college football. Pretty high in the SEC, if you ask me. Win on third down. If you can capitalize on those third down conversions and capitalize it and turn it into points, Ole Miss is a huge shot at pulling off the home upset and beating Georgia and winning this ball game and turning the SEC upside down and college football playoff up on its heels in this game. We got some playoff games. Playoff implication games Saturday for sure. Number 3, win the line of scrimmage battle. If you can be just as physical as Georgia in this game, I think you got a shot at winning this game, and I think you can do it. I think they have been a little bit more physical this year than they were last year, but they have to be even more physical in this game and show it in this game. Number 3, win a line of scrimmage battle on both sides of the ball. The line of scrimmage and physicality in this game is important on both sides of the ball. That was Ole Miss keys. Those are Georgia's keys just a minute ago. Who do I have winning this ball game between Georgia and Ole Miss? I think it's going to be closer than last year because last year was a little bit more of a blowout. I think Georgia's offense is going to keep them a little bit in it. I think defensively, they have the defense to. I think Ole Miss is going to score points, but I think defensively they're more physical than Ole Miss. I think that they are more physical than Ole Miss as a team. I think that the penalties are going to creep up on Ole Miss as they commit too many penalties. I think they have the defense to slow down Ole Miss's offense. I think Ole Miss's offense will score points, but I think Georgia's defense is just going to be a little bit too much in the end. I'm going to roll with the Bulldogs. Close win on the road. I'm going to roll with Georgia. Georgia defeats Ole Miss. Give me Georgia to beat Ole Miss. I'm going to go with 35-28. Georgia 35, Ole Miss 28. Georgia 35, Ole Miss 28. Georgia gets the win, goes to 8-1 on the year. Ole Miss goes to 7-3, and that potentially knocks Ole Miss out of the college football playoff race in Oxford. So Georgia 35, Ole Miss 28. I got Georgia defeating Ole Miss in this game. So, last but not least, and I said I was covering it last week. I said I was covering it. No drum roll for this one. Alabama at LSU. Okay. Conflicted on this game to no end. To no end. I was going towards Alabama, going towards LSU, back to Alabama, back to LSU. I've reached a conclusion. I have. But I'm going to tell you in a minute. Alabama 6-2, at LSU 6-2. LSU's coming off of a bye week. Tough loss against A&M. Back home, Saturday night in Death Valley, 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central, Saturday Night Football, SEC on ABC, kickoff, Saturday night in Death Valley. Kirk Herbstreit, Chris Fowler, Holly Rowe, all of them will be on the call for this ball game Saturday night. Big game, game of the week. Game day is going to be there. Huge game. Playoff elimination game for both teams. Alabama's coming off of a bye week as well and coming off of a huge win and blowout win against Missouri beforehand. So Alabama's coming off of a huge win. LSU's coming off of a huge loss. And both of them coming off of bye weeks. They both have to still fix things. Both teams are flawed. This is going to be a huge game. It is a high noon showdown game. It is a very important, this game is. College football playoff eliminator game. High noon. Let's saddle up, guns a-blazing, guns up, throw your guns up, cowboy, high noon duel. Saturday night in Death Valley. It is going to be loud. It is going to be raucous. We're going to be 90,000 to 100,000 plus there in Baton Rouge. Not going to be as full as Neyland, obviously, but it's going to be loud as all get out. Hostile environment. Kalen DeBoer's probably never faced an environment like this. Brian Kelly needs a win because it's a big game, and in big games, usually he doesn't win the big ones often. He has won big games while at LSU against Ole Miss and against Alabama 2 years ago in Baton Rouge. Both of them were 2-loss teams. Here we go. 2-loss team again. A lot of 2-loss teams have not made the playoffs, but it is more likely this year now that the playoff field is expanded to 12. Here we go with the keys. I'm going to get to the keys. It's a college football playoff eliminator game. This could help the SEC chances. This could help the playoff chances. Win or go home here. If Alabama loses, they're out of the playoff race. If LSU loses, they're out of the playoff race. Here we go. Alabama's a 2.5 favorite. They are a 2-point favorite on the road in Baton Rouge. LSU's a 2-point underdog at home in this game. Alabama keys are simple. Here we go. Number one, and they're pretty simple for both teams because they kind of mimic each other. Pressure Garrett Nussmeier. Number one, get to Garrett Nussmeier. LSU has only allowed 2 sacks during this season. Two sacks. And I'm enthusiastic when I say that, too, because that's impressive. And it's week 11. So only 2, and it was against A&M. Joe Moore Award, anybody? Am I hearing you guys? Offensive line of the year. Pressure Garrett Nussmeier. If he can pressure him, which is rare, get to the quarterback, make him throw picks, because I'm going to be real. That is in his DNA. Pressure him, and you should be fine. That's number one. Number two, just like I said with the picks, force turnovers. If you can force some turnovers and force many turnovers, because one or two turnovers, LSU can still win it. 3 or 4, which is a possibility, Bama can win off that. So 3 or 4 turnovers, and then you should be fine. Force turnovers. If they can put the ball on the ground, throw picks, Bama can force turnovers and win. Number 3, establish the running game with all facets of the ball. Jalen Milroe with J.M. Miller, with Justice Haynes, mainly in the running backs. Use your running backs in this one for sure. If you can run the ball and run the ball effectively with your backs, and a little bit with Jalen Milroe, you should win the game. You got to run it effectively in this ball game. You can win the game that way. Those are the 3 keys for Alabama in this one. I'm going to give you my side note here in a little bit. 3 keys for LSU were simple. Number 1, protect Garrett Nussmeier at all cost. Protect him at all cost. Protect him when he steps back to throw, because, spoiler alert, he's going to throw the ball because they create explosive plays, and LSU wants to be explosive on offense. Number 1, protect Garrett Nussmeier. Limit the sacks, minimize everything, and you should be fine. LSU's keys are the opposite of Alabama's here. Number 2, protect the football. Do not force turnovers. Do not turn the ball over. You had 3 turnovers with Texas A&M, Garrett Nussmeier. Limit those turnovers. Play well. Throw the ball well, effectively. Be cool, calm, protected. Protect the football. Play clean ball, and you should be fine in this game. Here is the circle key for this one for LSU. Number 3, establish the running game. Run the freaking football. You have to be balanced and get Caden Durham cooking. If they stop it, don't abandon it. If they stop the run a couple of times, don't abandon it. Keep feeding Caden Durham. Like the oven analogy that my brother said. It's like an oven, man. You got to let it preheat, and then you got to cook it. Preheat, then cook it. Feed him the ball, let him preheat, then he'll cook. Let him run the ball. Balanced offense. Help Garrett Nussmeier out. And if you have a balanced offense through the air and through the running game, you have a shot at winning this game. Note who wins the line of scrimmage battle in this game. That's the most important key. That's been the way it's always been with Alabama and LSU. Usually in the rivalry, the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Who wins the line of scrimmage battle? Who do I got winning this ball game? I've been conflicted back and forth on this. Back and forth. It's Saturday night in Death Valley. It's going to be huge, loud, raucous. Line of scrimmage, Bama could get to Garrett Nussmeier. I think LSU's offensive line is pretty good, though. I think Alabama can run the ball a little bit better than LSU can right now, but we can see. We can see what they have in store Saturday. Let's see if they can implement some fixes after the bye week. If this game was in Tuscaloosa, I would go with Alabama. However, I don't think Kalen DeBoer's faced an environment quite like Death Valley yet. He has faced an environment like Neyland, and Neyland's loud and raucous because it's large. He's faced hostile environments. But I don't know if he's faced Death Valley just like Death Valley yet. I don't think he's faced an experience quite like Death Valley yet. It's Saturday night in Death Valley. I'm going to roll the dice on this one. I'm taking LSU to win this ball game. Very close. I think LSU wins. They win 23-20. LSU 23, Alabama 20. Alabama goes to 6-3. LSU goes to 7-2. LSU remains in the playoff race, and they win, and they get back in it. Alabama is out, and they go home, and they're eliminated from the college ball playoff race. LSU wins 23-20 because of the home field advantage, and I think their line of scrimmage is just a little bit better because of that O-line. Give me LSU. I'm going to roll the dice because it's risky because of the big game thing with Brian Kelly. That's still wired into my head. But give me LSU to win close. 23-20, LSU defeats Alabama, wins and stays in it. Alabama goes home. LSU wins and defeats Alabama in Death Valley Saturday night. that just about does it for Pigskin Frenzy. We went overtime in this one. Big thank you for taking some time out of your Tuesday afternoon and evening and just listening to Pigskin Frenzy and college ball covers presented by me. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like each episode, leave comments down below. Spotify, Podbean, and Apple. All you got to do is just share around with others and follow on there as well. X, Instagram, and Facebook. Just type in Pigskin Frenzy. Follow up the pages as well. Over Instagram and X. Follow the pages there as well. We have episode updates, news and highlights from across college and NFL football. We have Instagram stories, trivia questions for college football. Go and answer today's college football one, as well as all things to date for Pigskin Frenzy. Guys, website www.pigskinfrenzy.weebly.com. There you'll find all things to date. Shout out to the Beard Club. Go and get your products now with that pre-Black Friday sale, 25% off. Thank you for joining us. We will be back Thursday to recap Week 9 of the NFL season. We're going to see who's in and who's out with the Pigskin Frenzy NFL injury report and talk about the latest. And we're going to talk about the trade deadline. We're covering the trade deadline, all the moves across the trade deadline, the latest moves around coaching because some big coaching changes are happening. We're going to talk about that and preview and predict the top matchups for Week 10 of the NFL season. You're not going to want to miss Thursday's episode of Pigskin Frenzy. And until Thursday, I'm Joel Norris, signing off. We will see you Thursday for our latest NFL edition of Pigskin Frenzy. And by the way, I'm usually not political on this show, but if you haven't voted, I voted today. If you haven't voted, go out and vote. It's important. It's Election Day. Go out and vote. Vote and make your voices heard for America. I'm Joel Norris, signing off. We will see you Thursday for another NFL edition of Pigskin Frenzy. For everybody out there, please and always stay the course.